Hey there, it's Christine, your friend who's walking the path from grief to growth. So, as I promised, last episode I had COVID and pneumonia. Recovering. I still have that lingering cough that everybody tends to get when they get COVID um, at a heavy strain. I'm still got the brain fog, obviously. But as promised, I have a nutritionist coming on today, but not just an ordinary nutritionist. And I cannot believe I found somebody all the way from Austria. She is a nutritionist, yoga therapist. She's going to share her grief story and how she came to be this. But, a lot of us tell us, a lot of people tell us, bear with me, um, to just do self care when we're grieving. And that that has such a broad picture of how do we take care of ourselves. The spa is not going to cut it when you're grieving. So we're going to get down to the nitty gritty, and she specializes in grieving for the mind, body, spirit, your whole being. And exactly when we put food in, when we tackle our days, are we approaching it from the perspective of healing ourselves from our grief, or at least maintaining and balancing? Um, yeah, she's going to know these answers. So today is not just about, hey, let's hear someone's grief story. I'm super excited because Grief Uprooted is starting to move in the direction of giving you those tangible answers, giving you like 3 things you can tackle today, and how to really change your life for the better. It's kind of like it's time to realize that grief is here to stay. It it has always been here, but now we've uprooted it. Let's look at it straight in the face and let's realize that our nutrition and what we put in our body and what we say to ourselves and what we're doing on a daily basis is affecting our healing. I'm so excited about today's episode. Let's go. Welcome to Grief Uprooted, a podcast dedicated to sharing your grief stories. Together, we embark on the mystery of one's grief journey as they learn to live, heal, and be courageous in a world rooted in trauma. Join myself, Christine, in an open discussion to help you uproot the grief in all our lives. I am an award-winning author, professional speaker, and humanitarian in the field of grief and trauma. I want you to be part of the discussion. Okay, I am so excited. The person I was just introducing you to is here. And so I just want to say welcome. Love for you to just introduce yourself. Where are you from? And kind of what's your grief story? What kind of brought you to this industry? Not one that people take on easily or willingly.
No, no. Well, thank you first of all for inviting me on your podcast.
Mhm.
It's always lovely to be able to reach more people. I'm originally from Austria, so you may notice an accent.
Mhm.
Um, I live in the UK. My husband was from the UK, and I was pushed really into this journey by his leukemia diagnosis. I was already sort of keeping my eyes and ears open for a change in profession. I'm originally a legal translator, but with my move to the UK, I lost half of my income because certified translations had to be sent by post, and yeah, most of my clients were in the Netherlands, so they didn't like the delay or the problems when
Yep.
translations didn't arrive on time. So, and then my husband was diagnosed, and it was just, I immediately knew that I had to do something nutrition-wise to help him get through his several rounds of chemotherapies. So that was the first step.
Oh,
And then I thought I knew already quite a lot about nutrition when I discovered this course, which was that just down the road from where we lived in York, nutrition course studying nutrition based on the functional medicine model. And I thought I would just fill my gaps. That was so naive because nutrition, once you step into that world, you never stop learning.
So let me
Um,
take you back because I kind of value what you just said in the prior. First off, how do I say your name? I purposely avoided it.
okay.
How do I say that? How do
It's yeah, it's Sabina.
Sabina? I was going to say Sabine.
Yes.
So, beautiful name. So, and it's so true to grief is that you had a career and grief entered in, and then a change of career happens. And it's amazing how that calling or that push is so heavy, um,
Hmm.
that you just change your whole life, like literally change your whole life. And then you start looking at nutrition and you start moving your way towards that. And um, and that's a massive thing to take on. It's not like this small little,
That's why I needed that push because I never saw myself at the other end of the, I'd seen nutritional practitioners, an Ayurvedic practitioner, but I could never see myself on the other side. So
yeah.
I did need that massive push.
And so, and that's kind of when we talk about from grief to growth, people often say to me, like, how are we growing from this? Well, I feel like we're solving some of the problems in the world when we're hit with grief. And all of a sudden, we need to change direction. And there's no question, we just do it because it's for our loved ones. So you take the course, and your husband is dying. What happens next?
Well, I mean, he didn't die immediately. He had 15 months. So I started the nutrition course and it was like after the first year. Um, I just had to interrupt my studies because he had his last relapse.
Mm, it's
A
all.
bit heavy.
And
It happened 7 years ago, so
yeah,
the big trigger.
it is a big trigger. What was his name? Because love to know about him.
Kevin,
Kev
Kevin,
Kevin.
Kevin Brown with an E. He used.
And I bet he introduced himself like that. Kevin Brown with an E.
Yes, he did. To all the nurses, he always made sure all the nurses, he was on first name basis and he knew all about them, He was very into having a personal relationship because he knew he would be seeing them, for weeks on end because he was sort of locked up. Because when you have chemotherapy with leukemia, you lose your whole, immune system that deals with bacteria, viruses, and
Yeah.
fungi and that sort of thing. So you have to be in a sort of quarantine. And that was really hard for him because he used to be a PE instructor, PE teacher in a previous life before he became a behavior support teacher. So he was always very active and
With people.
being, like he had cabin fever, basically.
Yeah. And if you don't mind me sharing, it's 7 years tomorrow. So we're celebrating his life. And
Mm.
I can't think of a better way to do that by helping other
Yes,
people. So
neither can I.
yeah, it's a huge honor to have you on here and talking about it all. And so you started into the nutrition and yoga actually to help him.
Yes, so yoga came as a second modality into my life when I had 1 hour in
Mm,
between visiting him in hospital, cooking for him. By that time, we had changed to an Ayurvedic lifestyle. So he could not eat the hospital food anymore, which was atrocious. Not nutritious at all, not helping you at all to recover. And so in between cooking and cleaning and shopping and doing all the other stuff, I only had 1 hour. And I remember clearly phoning a study colleague. I don't know why, because we'd only met 2 months before, but I just happened to phone her. And in our conversation, she mentioned Kundalini Yoga, that she knows this group just outside of York. And I could come and you know, have a look and join in. And that's what I did, and I never stopped.
and then you
So
got
he actually stopped going, and and yeah, I took her place, so to speak. And my first experience with Kundalini yoga was so powerful that was actually that convinced me to do the teacher training. I never saw myself as a yoga teacher either. It was
Yeah.
unbelievable. I actually didn't start the teacher training, to become a yoga teacher. That was never, ever my aim. I just wanted to have, because by that time it was clear that he wanted to go for a stem cell transplant, and I just wanted to have a sort of retreat. So every month there was this 2-day training, and I saw it as a retreat from, reducing my stress levels, because they were absolutely high from all the hospital visits and not really having time for myself.
Yeah. And I know
Nobody I was
you
looking
said
out for me.
you said something about something lifestyle. What was that word? You went to a what lifestyle? I can't say the word. You said you switched now to a kuniness.
Oh, Ayurvedic. Yeah, Ayurveda is a very ancient medical system from India. So
Oh,
it's
so
more
what's
than 5,000 years old. And we had to do something, because when he stopped with his chemotherapies, so his leukemia was under control, let's put it that way.
hmm,
But nutrition wise, he plateaued, in terms of recovery, he plateaued after 2 weeks of coming out of hospital.
wow.
So although I was cooking more with vegetables and things like that, it wasn't helping him recover. And I've always, ever since I came across Ayurveda for my IBS, which wasn't labeled IBS when I had it, I knew, and also when he was diagnosed, I had this Ayurvedic cookbook in the kitchen that had been standing there on the worktop all the time, and it gave me all the answers why he had leukemia,
Hmm,
what the imbalance, what had triggered it, and what the imbalance was all about. But my knowledge of Ayurveda was like very superficial.
yeah.
It's just a cookbook. You don't know
So is it
Ayurveda,
a
but
changing of eating behavior? Like, are you eating something completely different? Like, did you just change your whole way of eating to this to try it out?
so we didn't eat unhealthily, but also not healthily.
Mm.
So he liked microwaving things.
Oh, okay, I get
He
it.
we had dinners late, and that was our main meal. So one of the first things was to swap and have our main meal at lunchtime. That was the main actually recommendation. If we did anything from all the recommendation this Ayurvedic practitioner gave us that we went to see, if we only changed to having the main meal at lunchtime, that would already be a big step. And she just left it to him whether he wanted to follow all the recommendations, and he decided that we would do that. We
So,
wouldn't just change the main meal at lunchtime. We would do all the recommendations, and it helped. For 9 months, he was really fine
yeah. And it just
with
shows
very
you,
neutrophils, with very low neutrophils. I must say the neutrophils never recovered from the chemotherapies. They were always like below what they should be.
yeah.
And neutrophils, they help you, defend yourself against bacteria and viruses.
And
um,
I think it's so interesting how um a lot of times we look at people who are dying and say they're going to change their lives all of a sudden. And what I've witnessed in interviewing people is us who are grieving, the living, are changing our lives drastically when we're watching this happen to other people. And we're educating ourselves and learning new trades. Like, when you mentioned, I never imagined myself like this. If I had a nickel for every time a guest says that to me, because their trajectory in life just did a 90 degrees flip. And it's usually towards something that's way more fulfilling. They're
yes.
calling what they're good at. And it's kind of like a slap in the face. Their grief said, "Hey, you're going in the wrong direction. Now turn it
Mhm.
around and go in the right direction." So you do all this and you have the education, and unfortunately, your husband passes. Um, and I really want to dive into, how individuals through their grief, how this would help somebody. So I'm grieving, and from a holistic point of view, and as I mentioned, I am just coming out of COVID, which really hit me to change me in a direction of I really have to start looking at my health. and realized that COVID was a living grief. And I know it is not at the intensity level of losing a loved one, but when we have grief, which I already have, and then we have that intensity level of, okay, here I am grieving the loss of my brother, my loved ones, and my career pulls into there too. And then I have an illness attacking my autoimmune, attacking my body. My level just went like this. And, emotionally, physically, spiritually, I just felt I had fallen just completely and then got pneumonia. And it was like, what am I doing every day to my body? What am I putting in my body? How am I feeling? So, from a holistic perspective, what does that bring to someone who's grieving?
You mean the impact of grief?
Yeah, on the body and how yeah, let's start there.
Well, that's another thing I learned from going through it myself, that um, the impact is huge,
Mhm,
but nobody tells you. Very few people are aware of the impact, the massive impact, because one of the things I had to figure out myself is grief is emotional stress.
mhm,
And stress in any shape or form has, we have the same response to it, whether it's financial stress or emotional stress or stress in a relationship, or I don't know, there's so many types of stress. Anyway, the stress response is always the same. It shuts down our digestive system because we want to run away from the threat, the danger, the saber-toothed tiger, and our digestive system is redundant. We need energy, so all the systems in the body are activated that can help us run away from the tiger. So our liver releases glucose, which is sugar, gives us energy, and that sugar is pumped into our limbs to run away, and our heart, because it has to be strong and beat faster. And all this happens also when we're grieving. When when we
mhm,
lose our loved one, it's just like shock, numbness. But then also the stress response is activated, and we're so unaware of it. I
mhm.
wasn't aware of that happening, and until I came across a scientific paper that explained it all, and the impact on the immune system, on the blood, on our heart pressure, or blood pressure. I mean, on our heart. I mean, from yoga as well. Like the heart chakra is massively impacted. So I was always aware that I had to watch out for any this area, the lungs and the heart. Like there's so many people who are, all of a sudden have a heart attack or some lung disorder after a bereavement or breast cancer.
Yeah.
It's so I thought I really need to look out for this area. And by looking out for this, you look out for the whole body, because heart and lungs are important for breathing and blood circulation. So that's also very, very good first step, but it's
Well,
not easy.
and I love how you're bringing that spiritual aspect into the nutrition too, because I think that's where people really fall apart. We like John Travolta with his wife dying and a child dying. Um, I learned that one thing in life people cannot control, and it's their grief response. And I find that so fascinating because we watch famous people such as John Travolta come out to introduce the people who have died for the year. The man started to cry. And
Mm-hmm.
I personally, every podcast, cry um, because my grief is hit or stricken. And I must probably where that crazy word came from. She's grief stricken, right? And
Mm-hmm.
can't control the physical response to this. So that's where we look at it and go, okay, I can't control the physical response to this. And a lot of times we separate, well, here's nutrition. So, I'm just going to eat better. I'm going to eat more leafy greens. And then I'm going to go over here and expect my body to be okay. But that's exactly it. It's hitting, coming from the perspective of a trauma specialist on the emotional end. That's exactly it. Your heart hurts. And people actually
Mhm.
die from that. People actually die
Yes,
from a broken heart. We look at Princess Leia,
yes.
with her mother dying. A lot of times people are like, "What?" And it's like, it does happen. Like, it's there. Her mom died and she died, or she died and then her mother died. I forget how it went. All you Star Wars fans will know it. But so when we look at this and we're looking at all nutrition, yoga therapy, how do we integrate that in? So we know we're grieving, we know we're having a hard time. How do we take that all and integrate it into our life?
Well, one of the first things that I always recommend is become aware of your breathing.
Mm.
Because I remember how affected my breathing was. I mean, I could barely breathe, and that's another symptoms I hear many people talk about. They have problems breathing because it's like either a rock being placed on your lungs and your lungs can't expand, or it's like you're being pulled towards the ground by the heaviness. I don't know whether this sculpture really personifies grief and the heaviness of grief. All this, it's also made with huge stones. So we have trouble breathing.
Oh, I love that you're just starting right at the basis, how we even breathe.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Breathing is a basic thing, and it's cheap. It's free.
Yeah.
And nature gives us everything we need to cope well with grief. But the problem in our modern day society is we do all the things unfortunately wrong,
Mm.
because society just deals with it the wrong way. And supermarkets didn't exist 50 or 60 years ago. So we didn't have access to all this comfort food in the form of sugar, right? That wasn't available
Yeah.
to people in former times. So they had a much better way, I think, an easier way to deal with grief, because they didn't have the sugar addiction coming into it, and emotional eating. Maybe they did. If they were rich, they had access to sugar. But if they didn't, they just had to eat normal things, with lots of fiber. And that's what we need. We
So
don't need.
what does breathing normal, um I guess normal, maybe not the word, but I know I was taught a breathing technique. Um,
Mhm.
what's breathing like? Because I notice so I'm just going to use myself as an example. When I get panicky, I breathe heavy. Like now that you've told me about breathing, I'm feeling myself breathe. and,
Yes.
and so now I'm well aware that I'm breathing. But I find when I panic, I'm like,
Yes, yeah, you start hyperventilating, right? You only breathe from here, right? And that actually makes you hyperventilate even more. So you get into this vicious cycle of not being able to breathe properly if you get an anxiety attack. I did actually have an anxiety attack, one, and that was enough, but it was really scary. So
we were taught this technique, and it was when we worked in trauma, and we were to breathe normal, which you just always through your nose, and you
yeah.
would take a deep breath in, and then you would exhale through your nose, and I'm doing it through my mouth, and then you'd plug your nose for a couple
Mm,
seconds, and
yeah.
then when you let go and breathe in through your nose, you were forced to breathe in, and it calmed.
Do
So
you know what happens when you suspend your breath on the exhale, you actually make more nitric oxide,
yes,
and
and
that calms you down.
that calms.
That's why we also so are supposed to breathe through our nose. But how many people breathe through their nose most of the time,
Yeah,
unless they talk or eat?
yeah,
Many people, I observe them in the street, they're just like walking with their mouth open.
yeah. Well, and it's funny because I was taught something and now you as the expert just put it all into perspective for me because I would be at work walking along in a stressful situation trying to calm myself down and now just to know like breathe in through your nose. And it naturally makes you breathe back in. And
Yes, it
knowing
does.
knowing that I did this feeling silly, which I felt silly just doing it for you right now, it does if you repetitively do it, it 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 calms. It causes you to breathe back through your nose, and it's creating, whatever you just called them, neutro something, uh,
Non-nitric oxides. Yeah.
nitrile oxide, and
Nitric. Yeah.
what a great technique, just to start there with your grief. And when you get that panic attack and when you start, oh, that's amazing. What's the next one you got in your pocket? What's
No,
it?
breathing itself is already quite powerful. And I can hardly recommend the book I think it's called Breath by James Nestor. He
Okay.
explains why nose breathing is so important. I did an experiment, just blocking off his nose for about a week, and all the the health issues he got. Not just him, he did it with a second person. So it really is that powerful, breathing through your
So
nose most of the time.
our number one
Yeah.
thing is to start with breathing and blocking your
Yeah.
nose off and doing that technique. That's amazing. Um,
Yeah,
but then when you,
and always make sure you actually when you breathe in, you push your tummy out, and when you exhale, you pull the tummy towards your spine, because a lot of times we do it the other way around. That's not helpful either.
yeah,
So through my yoga teacher training, I actually learned to breathe properly. So that basic, knowing how to breathe properly, naturally, was also like helping me, of course.
yeah,
So I think my husband just introduced me to all the modalities that I needed to, cope better with grief.
yeah,
I think if he had died without me having started, studying nutrition and started doing yoga, meditation, and breathing techniques, I would have been so lost,
yeah.
like a lot of people. So,
And I
and
think
then that's why I feel privileged, to share everything,
that,
because I was privileged actually, and so fortunate.
yeah.
So
You took the words out of my mouth because that's where I was going to go. A lot of times we don't realize when we've lost a loved one, the things we've learned. And us just getting on here and talking to you out there, our audience, and saying, number one is focus on your breath. You have the ability, this body has the ability to heal and to calm
yes,
and to bring you down. We forget about that. We really do.
yes,
Um, so the next step, because I think too, a lot of us, like we only have an hour here, and people are like, well, I can't afford to join yoga. I can't afford, like, you've been years learning about this, and this is what you do on a regular basis. So just being able to say, start with the breath is so valuable, so valuable. We're just going to take a short break and we will be right back. And we're going to learn some other great techniques to help you today with your grieving. Have you often had a story you want to share, but it's one that you feel you can't share for it has great sadness, sorrow, it's heart-wrenching, and you think that people don't want to hear it? Many of us carry stories with us throughout our lives that have impacted us so greatly that we have went silent. We have silenced because we think nobody wants to hear our story. No one wants to talk about it. I'm here to tell you, I want to hear your story. Grief Uprooted was created for you to be able to share that story. Your story of great sadness, sorrow is one that should be shared. And you may ask yourself, why should I share this story with the world? Because there are others that have experienced similar grief. We've all experienced stories of sadness and sorrow. The reason we are not healing, the reason that our mental health is falling is because we are not talking. We are not talking about the grief that weighs so very heavy on who you are. Reach out, share your story with Grief Uprooted. Together, we will grieve, and together we can heal. Don't be shy. Reach out. Visit griefuprooted.com. Hit podcast and ask to be a guest. I want to hear from you. I love you. Your story matters. And together we will heal. Take care. Okay, welcome back. So just to recap, the very first thing you need to do when you're grieving is learn how to breathe. Sounds insane, but it will change your life and it will change how you are grieving. And some of those simple steps we just spoke about. So let's move to what would be the next thing to kind of change in our eating behavior. What could we kind of do that would be an easy step towards that might help us?
So we're talking about recently bereaved people,
Mhm.
people who just lost somebody. Yeah. So I heard somebody write, or I read a blog written by another widow that it doesn't matter what you eat, just you need to eat. And that's wrong. It's completely wrong. It does matter what you eat, and it also matters when you eat. So eating at random, which we often do when we are bereaved, because we just forget about eating, especially when you've lost your partner, you may be left on your own. There's no motivation, no energy, maybe no food in the house. So it's really difficult to get back into eating, but it's crucial. And the first thing is the breakfast.
Mm.
We have something called blood sugar levels, and they need to be as stable as possible. Stress can already cause imbalanced blood sugar levels. So there's already that which we can't really control unless we do the breathing, right? Because we can control stress levels through breathing. But then we can also get into a more regular meal routine, like having breakfast at a certain time. Make sure it's at the same time, ideally before 9, but I know many people struggle with sleep. So I'm just talking about ideal times to get slowly into a main meal at lunchtime if you can. Really important, because we digest our food better at lunchtime. It's our digestive system follows the sun. And then have a light dinner. And again, at the same time, more or less every day, between 12 and 2, lunch, and between 5 and 7, dinner. And then a 3-hour gap, nothing, no more food until you go to bed, ideally by 10. But again, that's, we're talking about bereaved people who don't go to bed by 10, most of us, from various psychological reasons as well. So if you've lost your partner, you may not want to go to bed.
And what do I have at 10 o'clock? Do I get something at 10 o'clock before I go
No, but our body detoxifies between 10 and 2.
to?
So if we miss that window, and it's a physiological thing, our brain just shrinks a little bit, and that allows some fluid to go around the brain and get rid of all the waste and toxins that are also, are lodging in and accumulating in the brain, and gets rid of it. So can you imagine if you don't go to bed at that time and you just accumulate toxins and toxins and toxins?
Yeah.
Brain fog, like people talk about brain fog and grief. One of the reasons is we miss this
Ah,
bit.
I love where you're going. So now I have to back you up. You're exciting me. Because these are all the symptoms I have. And I'm sure everybody out there can relate to this. So I got to back you up to breakfast first. So,
Yes, exactly. Yes.
because not a breakfast eater. But now when we talk about breakfast, I need to know, is it okay to put in Like I'm on this kick of spinach and carrot juice and blueberry smoothies, spinach, carrot juice, and blueberries because it's easy, fast. I put it in a blender and I feel healthy. Now, when we talk about breakfast, is it the food I'm putting in? And I ask this because we're talking about grief. Is it the sitting down and actually eating the food and having that moment to yourself? Because there is an emotional part to this eating. Or is it the food I'm actually consuming? I guess it might be a combination of both. But I know majority of people, it is it okay to just have something quick at that 9 o'clock?
Yes, quick, but not Kellogg's cornflakes.
Oh, yes, yes. So,
Right, because they're full of sugar and lacking fiber. We need a lot of fiber to keep the blood sugar levels stable, right? They're already like this because of our emotional stress. So we need to balance them. And I know from personal experience what it feels if you don't balance them.
yeah,
So again, something I learned through personal experience, and I know I can back it up through, like everything I read professionally. So fiber is crucial, and it's not in Kellogg's cornflakes. But there are porridge with flax seeds would
yeah,
be perfect to keep your blood sugar level stable. Flax seeds because it has protein and it has beneficial oils. So
yes.
never become afraid of fat because every cell in our body needs fat and nerve cells in particular. So porridge is very quickly made within 5 minutes or so. Flax seeds, you chuck them in, a few tablespoons, and it also turns into some soluble fiber, which is also very good, to prevent constipation, to get our digestive system moving a little bit better.
Mhm.
And we need the omega-3 in flax seeds for our brain, immune system. So we
And you
tick a
can
lot of
swallow it.
boxes.
You can swallow it out of a cup. You can put it in a cup and drink it if you really had to.
You
Um,
can, but it doesn't taste very nice. So I will recommend putting it in the porridge, add some fresh ginger, chopped up. Also, again, ginger is great for our digestion, prevents any digestive issues, gets everything going, um, prevents gas and bloating and acid reflux and that sort of thing.
yeah.
And some dates, some natural sugar, and dates are also rich in fiber and minerals and vitamins. So just make the porridge a little bit more nutritious. Add some cinnamon. It's also good to keep blood sugar levels more stable.
And,
And
and
that's it.
it sounds so nice and simple, but when you talk about ginger, I see this in myself again, is I was on a plane recently to California and I had ginger to help me with nausea. And I
Mhm.
never even thought about grinding a little bit up and putting it in my porridge, like, because I do put it in like a big cup, and then when I'm working, I can drink the oatmeal. And but even just to add the ginger, essentially what you're saying is this isn't just a preventative. This can be every day. This can be part of my life. I never even thought about grinding that up. That's a good idea.
Yeah. Well, I mean, smoothies are good, but they should be warm because, like if you eat anything cold, so that's my second recommendation.
Mm,
So have breakfast, something simple. If you have Kellogg's cornflakes with milk, then at least make sure the milk is warm,
mm.
right? So that's a tiny step in the right direction.
And
So
why do that? Why with the warm?
because otherwise, our stomach has to heat it up, and that takes energy out of our body, and our body is already like devoid of energy. So you want to make everything as easy to digest as possible. So warming things up before you put them in the body takes already like one thing out of, like it makes it easier for the body to digest the meal.
And
So
I have no idea why you're triggering me right now, but you are. Oh, it's crazy. And I don't know how many times I say that, but simply listening to you say that is tearing me up because that's exactly what my grandmother did when my brother died. She gave me warm milk all the time, and I never understood what the warm milk was. So every time And people think it's ludicrous. She's from England. Oh, look at me. Oh, here you go. This is my dirty moment, everybody. Um, okay, I'm gonna pull it back together. Is She would always bring me warm milk every time I felt bad. She would say, "Here's a cup of warm milk." And we used to kind of giggle and go, "Why in the world would she give us warm milk?" But that makes sense. We're grieving. The first thing in the morning, you start your system with, "Here's a cold, drink of this, and it's going to make you healthy." Now, as I hear you talk, I think, oh, I maybe should rethink my smoothies. That should be something I do a little bit later in the day and have a little compassion for my physical body that perhaps doesn't need to burn that energy in warming something up. It needs to be taken care of. Wow, I'm surprised that hit me. So let's go into I love eating my dinner at lunchtime. I love pigging out at that time. And I may be the wrong analogy, but I tend to eat between 3 and 4, my main meal. Um, and so I'm curious, why would it be smart to eat our main meal at that time? At like
Between 3 and 4.
or between lunchtime. You're suggesting we eat our biggest meal at lunchtime.
Yeah, so I already said, like our digestive strength follows the sun. So in the morning, it wakes up like our body. So breakfast needs to be light. No, like English breakfast.
Yeah, yeah,
English breakfast was for farmers. We're not farmers. We don't need that huge, you
yes.
know, heavy and difficult to digest meal. And then as the morning progresses, our digestive strength improves like the sun, and it reaches its peak between 12 and 2, and
Okay.
depending, and the time zone. And then it wanes again, like the sun goes down. So our digestive strength goes down. The mistake many people make, and that brings me back to tradition, our grandmothers and even my mum and me, when I was at school, we had our main meal at lunchtime. We never had our main meal at dinner time. And then somehow, within the last 30 years or so, it changed.
Hmm.
In a lot of countries, that tradition, like of having a main meal at lunchtime was let go. And everybody just, because of, like work demands, and they want to have family dinners, but you can still have your main meal at lunchtime and have a family dinner by focusing not so much on the food, but focusing on spending quality time and have a quality conversation with your loved ones. It doesn't have to be a huge meal that you have with your loved ones in the evening,
Nice.
but just rethink things, if possible. There's slow cookers
Oh,
that can help with that, taking main meal with you. Yeah. There's all sorts of possibilities. If I always say, where there's a will, there's a way. So if you want to have your main meal at lunchtime, you can.
so
I,
at
I'm I
lunchtime,
travel a lot.
so at
Hmm?
lunchtime, would I be having like a steak dinner if I could? Would
It
I
would be better at lunchtime than at dinner.
Nice.
Steak is very, very heavy and difficult to digest in the evening.
And that makes so much sense also again because we're grieving that if we did that at lunchtime, we would gain the energy of the food and we would be able to focus on eating where I find that by dinner time I'm exhausted. I don't want to cook. I don't want to and I think meal prep. One of the things I did because I was home with COVID was I bought a huge amount of chicken and beef and I made up frozen meals. And I just take them from the freezer, put them into the fridge. I leave them there for the day and then have that ready to take with me for lunch. And that's such a great idea because, yeah, you're right. By the time we hit dinner, it would be great just to have something light and enjoy the people you're with. Isn't it's crazy. I know I'm crazy, maybe not the right word, but just how we perceive this in society, right? Get up, eat bacon and eggs, skip lunch or skip breakfast because I'm too busy,
Mhm.
and bow down
Yeah.
at nighttime, and then we wonder why we don't feel good. Um,
Yeah. Because our blood sugar levels do this all the time. They rise and dip and rise and dip. And then we get into cravings and emotional eating and comfort eating and having a snack, because our meals, if you skip, then all of a sudden we need something at 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning if we skip breakfast, because at some point your body needs energy and it's going to tell you, I need something. But then you've already missed, your breakfast time, and you are impinging on lunchtime. Because every time you eat something, you need stomach acid, bile, and digestive enzymes to digest a snack or a meal. So if you have a snack that takes these digestive juices of, out of the system to digest your next meal, right? So, and there's most of the time not enough time to build the levels right back up again. So you either digest your meal not properly because there's not enough stomach acid, or
Exactly.
you delay lunch and dinner because you had a snack and you're not hungry between 12 and 2, and then you delay it. And especially when you have a snack at 5 o'clock in the evening, when you're actually already like allowed, so to speak, to have dinner. It would be a good time to have dinner already instead of a snack. And you delay dinner until 8 o'clock, and then you can't sleep properly because you get indigestion.
Yeah.
And with our troubles of, falling asleep and staying asleep when we're grieving, having a heavy and late dinner is not conducive to having, a good sleep, and that sucks energy out of our body again.
I love
Sleep
where
is
you're
also
going.
so important, and there's so many reasons why we sleep badly, and it's not just because our brain is on overload and processing all the grief. It's also our habits.
Let's go there next. So, the breathing first, the time we're eating and what we're consuming. Um, this is so great because so many people ask me, like, how do I start to heal with my grief? And so many times we're talking about talk, go out, get friends. These are tangible things that people can do. Like we can learn
Yeah, also like eat well. Oh,
eat. Yeah. And what
there's
does
so
eat
many
well
sweat.
mean?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
What does
Yes,
that
eat
mean?
well.
And
It's
these
just like,
and this summarized up is so great. Like just make sure that your breakfast is warm and have some of those herbs in it that you would use to heal yourself. And then make sure that that lunch is your main meal. And then we move into a light dinner. And then let's move into sleep because now I feel like if I did all those things throughout the day, which are extremely simple, to start that habit, even if we were to say just start with step one, take
breakfast.
a moment with your breathing, take a
Yeah.
moment with, okay, I'm going to eat breakfast every day and try to make that lunch a little bigger. That all lends to sleep. And that kind of would be the third thing we're going to. Um, and I heard a bit about, I don't know if I pronounce it right, your circadian rhythm. And
Yes.
I kind of feel like you're touching on that when we're talking about with the sun and everything. So explain a little bit about how that works, like at 10 o'clock. And the other thing I heard you say prior to, and I just want to get out so I don't forget, is between those times of when we're sleeping, I often see like a Zamboni or a brush going through my brain saying, okay, I'm going to reorganize this crazy day you had and put everything where it is. And it's kind of a time for you to re-energize and to kind of clear things up. And I often find my dreams and things like that, studying Carl Jung and stuff, they bring healing. And so I think it's a time for the body to go, hey, let's clean up this little bit of disorganization and get you back. So talk a little bit about sleep and the circadian rhythm.
Yeah, so the circadian rhythms basically, it's following the natural rhythms of the sun.
Mm.
Or the body actually. I mean, and then the body follows the light and the sun. So we are a product of our environment. So we are not separate from our environment. We are very much linked to it, and the environment can make us ill or help us heal, depending. So if we follow the natural rhythms that our body wants to follow, because our body loves routine, then everything flows, everything's easy for the body. So that the body can then expend all its energy to heal from grief. And as I said before, the impact is massive. So the body needs a lot of energy to heal, and we make it easier. But if we go against the natural rhythms all the time, like going to bed late and eating irregularly and working at irregular times and eating and drinking, the drinking is also important when we drink and what we drink. We just make it difficult for the body and for ourselves in the end. And that was also something I learned from my husband's leukemia, like he didn't have enough energy to make mature white blood cells. So we had to make sure that every meal was, like that he had 3 regular meals and they were 100% nourishing and easy to digest, so that he had energy left to make these mature white blood cells. And digestion takes 60% out of the energy we produce from a meal. 60% of what we get in the form of energy from digesting a meal goes back into digesting our next meal. And 20% goes into our brain. So there's only 20% left for everything else. So can you imagine if we don't look after what we eat, when we eat, and how we eat, and make everything easy to digest, then where's the energy going to come from?
Well, and it makes so much sense if you put in a whole chocolate cake and, that really has no energy within it. The body's going to use all this time to digest that cake, and you're getting no value to your brain. You're getting no value.
Well, I mean, there is energy in the form of sugar, but it's going to do this to your blood sugar levels. So it's going to do this to your emotions.
Yes. And
because our emotions are impacted by our blood sugar levels.
And I was going to touch on that because I think, why, when we're grieving, do we not eat? And just going back to how we started, grief is an emotion we can't control. And Nature of Things, David Suzuki did a documentary on this, and I love the documentary. But and that's why we're all up here. We're all in our head. I know we carry the emotions here, but because we're overthinking all day and we're overthinking, like, where did our loved one go? How do I process this? How do I get better? Then let's throw in the stresses of, I don't look good. I shouldn't eat. It's going to make me fat. And we have all these crazy thoughts going on. I think we're spending so much time thinking that we're not spending time learning from our body and following the rhythm that you're talking about. We just spend all this time overthinking and going, okay, I'll try this. Okay, I'll try this. And everybody's looking for the magic fix, right? And it's so, and you say our bodies are habitual, and that's so true. So here's these easy techniques for us to do, which is breathe, eat at a specific time and choose our food, and sleep at a certain time and follow that rhythm. And I think, why in the world do we fight that?
Well, that's a good question. And I spent the whole past year thinking about why we find it so difficult. Like, first of all, grief pushes us into unhelpful habits, right? I mean, I didn't immediately, like, eat at regular times. I needed a big push by my Ayurvedic doctor, because he said, if you don't eat 3 happy meals every day, you are going to fall into a deep depression. Now, on top of the pain of grief, and I have a friend who suffered from major depression all his life, I didn't want to end up there. So that was my big motivator. So we all need a good piece of motivation to make some changes once we get into an irregular daily routine, which is natural and normal after losing a loved one. It's not something you can control. But then you need support in getting into this more regular routine again. And friends and family can help there by, making sure that you have the ingredients at home and in, so that you can, make breakfast, make lunch, make dinner at, certain times. If you don't have vegetables in and protein and healthy oils, how can you make a well-balanced meal? It's not possible. So you will grab the first thing that comes, within your reach, because at a certain moment in time you are going to be hungry.
I love
And
I love where I love everything you're saying. Yeah, and it actually tongue ties me because where we're going is that we need to have a group of people who are also conscious of their nutrition when they're grieving. What a great group that would be. I would join in the sense of even in my career. So many people in my career struggle with health and nutrition because we develop these habits to help us deal with the level of information coming in that's sad and it just makes you reflect on your own life consistently. I often think I'm an overthinker, but I think I'm an overthinker because there's so much knowledge of what could go wrong, what has gone wrong. And then there's all this knowledge of how you can change your life, how it can be better, and finding those habits that work with my body. Um, but you touch on something so true that we need that community. And you offer something like this. And that's what I love about this. This isn't just, hey, here's some advice to do. You actually offer something. And if I'm correct, it's free.
yes,
And that's
because it's
insane because nothing's for free. So
well,
share a little bit about that.
well, because I can see that habits, like habit change is so much more challenging when we're also bereaved.
Mm,
And driven by something that we didn't really process when we were a child. And grief also brings out negative things from our childhood. It's
mm.
an opportunity to process not just grief but everything that has happened in our life until that moment. That's what I learned. And then I was also reflecting on my own habits, right? I'm also still struggling with my coffee addiction. I know exactly where it comes from, but I haven't found anything that ticks all the boxes why I'm coffee addicted. So it's really important to become aware of why we have these habits, whether helpful or unhelpful, and how, what we could do instead, having coping strategies that we know could be helpful and we could try. And so I came up with this email series, which is funded by the National Lottery in the UK, to introduce a habit every week by email. And you can just try it for a week and see whether it fits into your regular routine, whether you can fit it in, whether it suits you as well as a person, right? Not everything people suggest fits with your personality as well. So, and I just introduce it and say why it could be helpful, what are the benefits, how you can introduce it, how you can integrate it into your daily routine. And there's also a community attached to it that you can join for more support and sharing. And
I love
I
that
would
because
say accountability, because I've recently learned that the word accountability is not a good one to use, because we don't need somebody from outside telling us off. We just need to be kind and compassionate and just like see what is good for us,
so true. So true. And what I love about this is we often say we're alone in grief. And then when
Mm.
we see people, well, let's join a group. Oh, I don't want to join a group. I don't have the energy to join a group. And I think, yeah, I hear you. So this is a way that it can come to your email. You can join the group
If
and
you want to, you don't have to, but it would, like help with
it's those baby steps in getting you to listen to other people. And I love what you're saying about accountability because that is the number one thing you hear consistently. When are you getting over your grief? When are you going to go out? Why don't you start dating again? You can try again and have another baby. Don't worry, you have another sibling. You just want to punch all these people in the face. Mind my French. And and
yeah.
it's like you're just so frustrated with these people that it's exhausting. It's exhausting listening to these people. And you want to be able to say, look, this is a process I need to go through. So to just to be able to receive that regular email that, hey, are you, I know you're grieving, and here's a little simple trick or habit we can start today. Love, love, love that. I think that's so, so needed. Um, and the other, I lost my other thought that I was going to say about it. Um, and I think it's really just that community environment, being able to have people who are talking about health and food also, because I remember what I was going to say. We look at the cake and the cookie and the coffee as a treat. I often
Mhm.
hear myself say
Yeah.
this.
Don't get me started on treats.
Yeah, because you just said, "Well, I like my coffee." And what came to me was, that's my treat. That's why every morning I'm like, "That's my treat." And then I think, "Well, that treat isn't very healthy for me." And now other people coffee may be fine for. It just depends on your system. Um, but I look at this now and think, yeah, maybe that's where I got to start too, rephrasing that chocolate cake as being the treat. And why is it a treat? It's the taste, that's all. Um,
Well, even not the taste, if you're not used to sugar anymore, it's not even the taste. I'm here in Vienna, like I'm surrounded by cakes. I haven't had a single cake yet.
I
And
guess
ice cream is really good. I haven't had because I haven't got this craving anymore.
yeah, and that's the high. I guess that's the other I have to look at, right? Like, if you haven't had sugar for a while and you eat that cake, you're buzzing around, and that's
Mm.
that's a
But they also like it's too much sugar all of a sudden because at the end of the day we don't need so much sugar. You know why we have the sugar cravings is because we need nourishment.
uh,
We need the sugar. It's not a craving for sugar, it's a craving for sweet things, sweet tasting things. In Ayurveda we call it sweet tasting. It can be meat, can be whole grains, can be oats, oat flakes. It can be honey, it can be sugar, right? It can be vegetables, can be root vegetables. It's all sweet tasting because it's building and nourishing and comforting and satisfying. And that's what we're craving when we're grieving because we lack energy. And
so
that's
true.
these cravings, but it's distorted. It's not distorted in our society. It's like, oh, we go for sugar, but in ancient times we wouldn't have gone for that sugar. We would have gone for berries and peaches and nectarines and meat and protein and that sort of thing. And even milk in former times was really healthy, but nowadays it's just not healthy.
That's so what a great way to wrap this up. So if people want to join the email list, obviously in the write-up and everything, I will be putting the links in. But what is your website? Because I think people will gain such a value from that.
So it's www dot then Sabine, so Sabine, Horner, HORNER.com.
Perfect. I can't thank you enough for being here. Like, I think this is such a great start and a turn in the sense that we can start helping people one step at a time instead of us just sharing grief stories. We're able to say, here's some tangible things you can do. So, thank you for tuning in today. I'm excited about this episode, as you can see, and I'm going to put all the links for you. And I'm going to do a little recap of all the things that we can start to do on your grief process and your grief journey. As usual, thank you for tuning in. It is only together that we grieve, and it is only together that we heal. Take care, guys. Grief Uprooted professional grief and empowerment coaching are not to be used as a substitute for professional advice by legal, medical, financial, business, spiritual, or other qualified professionals. All our products and services are designed for grief empowerment through learning and sharing of one's lived experiences. Hey there, it's Christine. I thought we needed to do a bit of a summary after today's episode. We learned 3 essential things for the grieving person: body, mind, and spirit. A lot of you ask me, where do I start? Well, let's start. Number 1, breath. When we start to feel our emotions rise up or we have that slight panic attack, we tend to breathe through our mouth. what we really want to do is breathe through our nose. And the nutritionist knew the technical chemical word for a little activity and how it helps us relax. And so, what we really want to do is breathe through our nose and exhale through our nose and hold just for a second or a minute. And we want to repetitively do this for a couple times. And what you'll notice is you start to relax. And the chemical, which has kind of, I've lost the word for right now, helps us relax. And by exhaling, breathing in through the nose and exhaling through the nose and plugging it, the body starts to generate and create something that helps us calm down hormonally, not just, because we breathed in. Our bodies are built to heal, and this helps us. So, just this simple breathing activity will cause us to calm down and refocus. They suggest doing it about 4 or 5 times. The technique works. I've tried it out, and I absolutely love it. Number two is our eating patterns, really looking at when are we having breakfast. So we want to essentially have breakfast around 9 o'clock. And one thing that Sabina suggested that I was kind of like, really, does that matter? Was that our breakfast should be hot. I was thinking, waking up, having that smoothie, getting myself going. It's too hard for the body to digest. We're grieving. We need to stop and think about it. We need to have a bowl of oatmeal or something warm, even warm up the milk for your cereal. That helps your body digest quicker and is calmer and easier on the system. Then, with that breakfast being warm, we need to make sure that lunchtime is our big meal. This makes so much sense when you're grieving because we don't have the energy to process a huge dinner. More alone when people say, "Hey, would you like to go out for dinner?" You're like, "I'm exhausted. My mind is grieving, I'm thinking." This gives you the opportunity at lunchtime to have that big meal. And then you have the rest of the day to digest that. And then for dinner, you can go out and have a small salad, something smaller, and then use your time and chatting and getting to know people, or even just watching a good show. If you're sitting and grieving and want something to occupy your mind, instead of that dinner being that big, heavy meal, it's going to be something light. And that big, heavy meal happened at lunchtime. Number three, sleep. Ugh, that's why our eating patterns, that's why our breathing is in place. So that by the time 10 o'clock comes, when our minds want to rest, and it's like dreaming of that little broom in our brain that's clearing out all the filters and all the things that we've been overthinking about or ruminating on, or we experience through the day, the body has this time to rest and energize you. And that usually happens between 10 to about whenever you wake up with the sun. So we want to make sure that our bodies are prepared with breathing proper and getting in and inhaling through our nose and exhaling, and hold your nose a little bit if you need that extra little bit of a intake of air. And it also, like I said, helps your body create some different hormones to help you relax even better. Then learn when you're eating. That maybe be a huge ticket for most of us who are grieving. When are we actually eating? And then let's make sure what we're putting in is warm and gentle to our bodies. And then making sure that that heavy dinner is at lunchtime and that at nighttime or dinner time, we're just enjoying the company of other people and we're having a light meal and then making sure we get a good night's rest and wake up with the sun. This is a start. I know it's not going to heal everything. I know that it's going to be difficult for you to do. So we've put some links in for you to receive emails. And these emails are once a month or once a week, I'm unsure. And they will keep us in these positive grief habits, keeping us and helping us really join together in what we do. Because if we grieve together, we will heal together. Take care, everybody. Bye.